Welcome all to Gridiron Gamblers right here on Pub Sports Radio. We have hit the divisional round of action. 7 games left in this entire season. 4 games here on today's show, and I got punched in the mouth over the wild card weekend. It was extremely disappointing and extremely aggravating. Oh, God. But sometimes a slap in the face is good. I would prefer not to have felt one. How are you doing, Andy, my friend?
Good. I mean, decent. It was all things considered, it wasn't the worst weekend in the world. And it's just like anything else. I mention this all the time, I think. It's kind of how you finish. And I had some Tampa Bay. And it's funny, they were knocking at the goal line, probably going to take the lead there. And it just unraveled from there. We'll get into Dak and how well he played a little after this. But I had a live over 39.5. And I had the second half over. And after that injury where they had to take him off on the board, I'm like, man, I wonder if I think there were some teams that maybe don't have Tom Brady on the staff that might have just run the ball and kicked a field goal there and just called it. I guess it's the playoffs. You still try. Obviously, they got the onside. That was something, but I couldn't have been happier to see one of the greatest competitors of all time. Because, man, I'm sure he cares deeply about his injured teammate who went off the field, but as soon as that was over, he was dialed right back in. I needed that. That touchdown would have sent me. That touchdown would have, and not having that touchdown would have set me in a bad mood coming into today. But it's nice to get a couple live bets home, and got anybody who took Brady overs. Like, I think they set his completion or attempts and completions overs were hilariously low. I know some people that went ham on that and made some money. So. Fun weekend of football, obviously. Some good games, especially if you enjoy young quarterbacks. It's that time. It's their time right now. So more of that this weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. I got in on the over live at 38.5 as well. But I was in an uncomfortable situation where I didn't send in a couple parlays of a best friend's action. And if the Bucks had have won, I would have had to send them 1.5K. So I did hedge a little bit on the Bucks just to ensure that I wouldn't get hurt too badly. So it's just a messed up week. Messed up weeks. Seattle, San Francisco under 43 was the starter. That wasn't even close. Bengals -7 pushed. Bills first half -7. When it was 17-9. And, when you're not running well, I was like, well, this is how I'm going to lose this bet.
Yeah.
I explained it, how I was going to lose the bet. And sure enough, Josh Allen threw a pick literally seconds after I, explained how I was going to lose that bet. Chargers, Jacksonville under 47 was awful. The Chargers defense, the way they looked in the second half was just appalling. And then Dallas, Tampa Bay over 45.5. I didn't want to bet it. I didn't want to bet it. I didn't want to. I didn't want to bet it because all the other games had gone over. But this was the only one that I thought was going to go over. So I pulled the trigger, and for it to land on 45 with 4 missed extra point kicks was just extremely aggravating.
Just Jimmy, and let's not even do numbers. Let's do a percentage. Let me say. From the future, the total's 45.5. I'm not going to tell you how many field goals there were. That's a mystery. But I will say there were 7 touchdowns. What percentage of your annual income do you want to put on that over? It's a chunk. I mean, that's sickening to have 7 touchdowns and find the full game under. Just wild. I've never seen anything like that where Maher just got. Anyone who golfs. It was full knoblock. If people are old enough to remember when he was hitting Keith Olbermann's mom in the stands with throws to first base. It was baffling what was happening to that. I can't believe they trotted him out there. I felt great that he got his 5th. The 5th try, he got one in. Because at that point, that guy's just probably sobbing in the shower. It's still at this point if he can't make 5.
Yeah,
that's rough. I think you deserved a better fate, especially with, Tampa playing from behind is such a recipe for points.
Yeah. It was just a very, very, very frustrating week. The season's gone well, so you are. I don't know. It's still bothersome, and I'd like to turn it around right here. Andy, you cashed on your over in Dolphins Bills. When the quarterback was announced that it was Skylar.
Went to like 44.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do. You just have to take it in the shorts and pray for the best.
And you easily cashed that. You've had a nice run with Buffalo overs. You also had Bengals -7, which was a push. I know you had some 5.5 in your pocket, but for show purposes. And then your teaser had the Bucks a part of it. So you were 1-1, down 0.1 units. But let's move on to action right now and get rolling here, because this is 4 very fascinating games. Shout out to all the cappers in the chat: Gerald Jones, Tasha, Danny, Lopez. Slatsy says, Andy looking thirsty tonight. He's on Bengals +5 and 49ers -3.5. And says Dallas kicker misses at least 1 extra point, which brings it down to 2.5. There's Susie Easton. Great to see all of you guys. Gerald Jones. Let's get to work here. Gridiron Gamblers, divisional round of the playoffs. We start on Saturday, January 21st, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. AFC divisional playoffs. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Kansas City Chiefs. These Jaguars 9-8 or 10-8 now. 4-5 on the road. The Chiefs 14-3, 7-1 at home. Arrowhead Stadium, Kansas City, Missouri. 42 Fahrenheit, partly cloudy, 8 miles per hour. We'll start with the line history here for this one. This one opened up at Pinnacle with the Jags at +10, but that +10 was at -135. Quickly moved to 8, -104. Now it's 8.5. -106. So you got the Chiefs 8.5 point favorites. From a total perspective, it opened up at 51.5. It is now at 52.5 and is juiced to the over. We have 17,033 tickets in. 51% of the tickets and 87% of the cash is on the Jacksonville Jaguars at this point. 51% of the tickets and 94% of the cash is on the under, and yet it's gone up a point. Jaguars coming off the third biggest comeback in playoff history, winning 31-30 at home over the Chargers. They came back from 27-0 down. They've now won 6 straight. They've covered the spread in 5 of those. They put up 31 points despite 5 turnovers and going just 2 for 10 on third down. They became the first team to win a playoff game with a turnover differential of -5 or worse. Teams had been 0-19 in that situation. And that's the third time this year that they were trailing by 17 points or more and managed to come back and win. A lot of character on this football team. And we'll start with Trevor Lawrence, 28-47 for 288 yards, 4 touchdowns, 4 picks. He's never lost a game on a Saturday in high school, college, and now in the NFL. The third quarterback in the Super Bowl era to throw 4 interceptions in the first half of a playoff game. Evan Ingram looked very good. Caught 7 passes for 93 yards, touchdown. Christian Kirk caught 8 for 78 in the touchdown. Zay Jones caught 8 for 74. Etienne ran 20 times for 109 yards. Caught a pass for 12 yards. The Jaguars are 8th in the NFL, averaging 4.8 yards per carry, and that's a spot where the Chiefs can be susceptible. The Jaguars were 9th in offensive DVOA during the regular season. The defense was very strong in the second half, holding the Chargers to 3 points on 4 possessions, 3 sacks, 10 quarterback hits. They finished the regular season with the 4th highest pressure rate at 25.1%. Pro Football Focus gave them the 6th highest pass rush grade. And it's Josh Allen, Arden Key, and Trayvon Walker are really strong. And then they have second-year cornerback Tyson Campbell, who has become a shutdown DB. Since week 14, he's allowed 74 receiving yards on 22 targets in his direction. Over the last 3 games, they're holding teams to only 4.4 yards per play. That's the 3rd best number in the NFL over that stretch. Those are your Jacksonville Jaguars. The Chiefs come in fresh off the bye week that comes with being the number 1 seed in the AFC. Back in week 10, these teams played. Kansas City closed as 9.5 point favorites, and they won 27-17. The Jags had a +3 turnover margin and still lost the game by double digits. Trevor Lawrence was sacked a season high 5 times in that game. And it was Chris Jones. He accounted for 50% of Kansas City's pressures in week 10. He had 2 of his sacks. And Brandon Scherf didn't have any answer at all. He allowed 3 pressures on 2 sacks. And now with Jawan Taylor out, Walker Little starts at left tackle, and that's a big problem. Walker Little, 59.9 Pro Football Focus pass block grade is bad. He's been bad since he was drafted. They took a ton of heat for drafting him, and he's just not been good. The Chiefs have 7 different defenders with at least 3.5 sacks. They're 2-11 against the spread in their last 13 games against AFC opponents. But their offense is so dangerous. They lead the league in EPA per play. Patrick Mahomes 4-0 in the divisional round with 9 touchdowns and no picks, 308 yards passing per game. He's special, and he can take over. He threw 63 passes of 20 yards or longer this year and 0 interceptions on them. I mean, that's amazing. Now they have Pacheco, who runs for 4.9 yards per carry. He can run the ball between the hash marks. He can run the ball right at the teeth of the defense. Where are they susceptible? They're 31st in their red zone defense. They allow opponents to score 67.27% of the time. And Spagnuolo made a big move by moving Trent McDuffie into the slot. Throughout the season, it became clear that McDuffie is the team's best cover corner, and he will be on Christian Kirk in this game. Take it away for us, Andy. The Jaguars at 8.5, and this total at 52.5. The floor is yours.
Yeah, as we often find out later in the year, these numbers get awful tight. I have my updated numbers. My line for this game is Kansas City minus 8.3. So I'm pretty much on market with this one. I believe there's a longer tail to Jacksonville. Like, if you really do like Jacksonville, I do think there's probably a case for taking some money line. If we could just, and I know you can do this, it's not how life works, but if you could throw away that first half and just look at how, and it called for it. He had to. Obviously, game state plays a big part in the game. The play calling, the play sequencing, everything about Jacksonville and how they had to play in the second half. But I mean, it didn't look like a guy who hadn't played playoff games before. It looked like a guy who was very confident every time they went down the field. That was a really good offensive output. Like, this total is probably creeping up towards being too high at this point. But the fact that Jacksonville's defense can be susceptible, and you're getting a Kansas City team that's had 2 weeks to prep. You're getting a rested Kansas City team. You're getting an absolute monster if the game state turns to Jacksonville leading. Like I mentioned, Jacksonville from behind created a bunch of offensive opportunities, but Kansas City from behind is terrifying. You guys remember, I think they were down like 24 to the Texans a couple of years ago. That was they led at halftime in that game. That was just obscene with this. And I know Tyreek's not here. It's a different kind of offense, but Kelsey is, he's matchup proof. We've seen them, get the other receivers, find roles for them. They've used Pacheco nicely. They have a couple of backs they use nicely, and just obviously it's a very smart offense. Both defenses are a little susceptible too. So this total, while I think it's a little high, scares the piss out of me. I know everybody's going to want to use this in teasers. And yeah, the teaser, America's teaser, I don't know. Maybe I should just put it on the board because the whole world's going to play Philly and Buffalo in a teaser. It makes perfect sense. It's a Wong teaser. It's your basic strategy math teaser. The totals are a little high for that, so I'm probably avoiding it as an official play, but I'm pretty nuts on. Maybe I could just, how about just a small bet on, can we do half a unit? Does that work?
No.
I wanted Jacksonville straight up, but I'm certainly not making that a full play.
Yeah.
I'm serious. Like, if I were going to bet this, it would be just Jacksonville straight up. I would not take the points with them.
So we talked about some of the spots
the blowout possibility is there, but if it's close, I like them to win, and I want to get that money.
We talked about some of the spots where the Chiefs are vulnerable, and the 31st red zone defense is the one that kind of jumps out.
Mm-hmm.
Where else do you think that the Chiefs have some vulnerabilities that the Jaguars can take advantage of?
We didn't really discuss this team during the first half of the year as being dangerous because they started out 2-6. And a lot of the discussions in the offseason were just all the additions. How much they spent on Kirk, how much they spent on everything that they added to this offense. And it's a really good roster, all things considered. Like, I think maybe that's where they got, lost in the shuffle a little, because I'm trying to think what Tennessee's record was at that point. I would love to see what the highest number somebody got on Jacksonville to win the division was at that point. It had to be like 20-1 in season at certain points, just how bad they were to start the season. It was a tough scheduled start, and obviously coming into it with a new coach and stuff. But I mean, the Marvin Jones Jr. used to be something. Like that was a scary tandem up in Detroit for a couple years. That's like the third receiver I'm worried about, honestly. Like they've got things going with Zay and Christian Kirk, and I mean Evan Ingram was important. Like these are it's like nothing pop out. There's no Justin Jefferson. There's no Chase. I mean, it's not like this scary offense, this one piece that we're going to talk about. But the fact is they added help to the line. They added help to the receiving core. They have some playmakers. ETN is, didn't play during the urban era. I'm going to call it an era, even though it was like 10 games. But the fact is ETN's a very good running back. Like, I don't know if we just forget about his college career because he didn't play as a rookie. Like this, it's kind of a sum of the parts. I said this about the Minnesota offense, like everything except Jefferson, because Drew pushed me on that once. He says, I don't think anyone's good on that team besides Jefferson. I said, nobody is, but the sum of it is all a bunch of above average guys, like Thielen and Irv and Hawkinson. Obviously Hawkinson's had some big games, but all those guys are good. And you the sum of the parts equals something good. And I think that's just kind of what you're getting with this Jacksonville team. There's not somebody you can hone in on and, hey, we're going to try to take away Kelce, because that's your game plan for Jacksonville, right? You really try to limit Kelce. I don't think Kansas City has something you can hone in on, try to limit. I guess I would be trying to pressure Trevor Lawrence, especially with the offensive line injury, and I'd be trying to make him make bad decisions because he's still a very young quarterback, but it's not like I'm going to take one of these receivers and be like, yeah, if we shut down Zay Jones, game over. This shit ain't happening. So I think they have a lot of different ways they can attack you, and none of it's terribly flashy. It was just effective. And we saw Doug Peterson I brought this up to somebody. I said, because he won a Super Bowl and he's kind of playing with house money here too, because nobody expected this team to be very good this year yet. Like he seems real calm on the sidelines during that whole comeback. Like he just kind of seemed like, well, we're gonna do our best. We're gonna try to bring this back. And I mean, he didn't freeze in any big moments. How many times do we shit on coaches for making bad decisions? I mean, we did it in that game with Staley and bye-bye Lombardi. But I mean, we've been very critical of a lot of coaching decisions. I mean, just in the same state. McDaniel at the end of that Miami game just couldn't get plays in on time. They were constantly taking procedural penalties. So, yeah, I don't know if Lawrence has truly gotten the playoff jitters out of his system, which, boy, if playoff jitters are real, Trevor Lawrence had him in the first half because that was atrocious. So if he's got that out of the system, this offense is good. I mean, just from an EPA per play, they're top 5 for the season right now for me. Especially, maybe not as a running team, but as far as a drop back EPA per play, I think I have them 5th or 6th right now. So it's just a sneaky good offense that people didn't talk about during the first half of the year because they weren't as sneaky good at that point.
So what are the main 3 points why you were not making the Jaguars an official spot at +8.5? Is it because it's too close to the line that you have, so you don't feel there's a big enough advantage? Is it because the Chiefs are rested coming in off of the bye week and the Jags had to expend a ton of energy in that comeback victory? What are the key reasons for you not to make the Jaguars +8.5 an official pick right here?
So I do just see it as a bit of an asymmetrical distribution of results. Like if it's a close game, I think I don't think there's a lot of close games that Jacksonville loses. Like if Jacksonville loses, they lose. Like Kansas City romps, we see Trevor Lawrence come out and look poor again. Like at that point, if I wanted a spread pick, if I wanted it close, I'd take like a plus money Jacksonville +3. or some sort of alt line. And that's what I'm saying. I would rather just play Jacksonville straight up. It feels like either Jacksonville wins this game or they lose this game horribly. And it just shows up like, oh man, this is a much tougher challenge against an actual good coach, against a team that's rested. You do, and people are bringing up KC's ATS record. You do pay a premium for Kansas City, but I mean, I looked at some other people's power numbers too, and a lot of people are pretty close to this number as well. And you do have to give. It doesn't matter if it's Andy Reid or Andy Molitor. You got to give them a little bit of credit for coming off the bye. I mean, just the team in general is rested, ready, and more time to prep for this. Although they did have a little bit of a disadvantage of, in the case of like knowing who you're going to play. Like it was a bit of a toss-up game. It's not like you can say, hey, we're leaning 70-30 Chargers. We'll prep more for the Chargers. They did have to kind of wait for the game to finish up to feel out how they wanted to start prepping and who for. So, but yeah, I just see it as kind of a dual outcome kind of thing. KC by margin or Jacksonville straight up. So Q the Jacksonville loses by 3, I guess.
Yeah, I have interest. I like that idea of I'm going to wait a little bit. I would like the books to show some sign of concern with all the money coming in on the Jags. I mean, Pinnacle has gone from 8 to 8.5 today, so they are not showing any sign of concern. Bet Online has moved it from 2-8. It was at 9 yesterday afternoon, so they're showing some sign of concern. I'd like to see that. If I see that, then I will get in on the Jaguars. I think they can keep this game within a touchdown. But no official pick here from either of us. But I'm very interested in the Jaguars. And I don't know. I had the under when these two teams played in week 10. But I also had the Jags. So I lost a little bit of vig on that. I didn't get the I missed that by
and I think I have 2 different tickets on them to win the AFC at like 80-1. So I might be wearing teal colored glasses too, because it would be awful nice if they got this game.
Oh wow, he'd be in a great position.
Yeah, we could definitely take some Bills or Bengals at that point.
So a free $500 bet on the side right now at 52.5. Would you go under or over?
I'd still probably play the under. I think there is room in this under. Like it's still a playoff game. Although my concern is, and some people, I'd like to see the actual stats on this. Some people were saying, we had low scoring this year during the season. Perhaps the NFL was worried about that. Games aren't rigged, refs aren't paid off, but the NFL does give refs directives sometimes. Like, hey, we're emphasizing this rule, call this more. And that plays the other way because offensive holding was not a thing on Saturday. There was a few games where the offenses were just playing. It was odd though. They weren't calling the pass interference, which could have helped. I don't know if that would have been just too much for the offenses, but I mean, you saw all the points. Offenses, we weren't seeing a ton of penalties. Refs were letting them play. So, and maybe for Kansas City, a 10-yard penalty isn't a death sentence anyway. But some of these teams, you get a bad holding call on second down, you're done. That's a punt. So you take away some of that, and scoring just goes up. So I still like the under, but that is sitting in the back of my head. The fact that they called some games a little odd, I thought.
Yeah, I sort of lean to the under as well. But I see it climbing, and I'm curious to see how high it will climb. Let's move on. Let's go over to the NFC, the Saturday night game, 8:15 p.m. Eastern, NFC Divisional Playoffs. New York Giants 9-7-1, 4-4 on the road. 10-7-1, I guess, 5-4 on the road, including that playoff victory over the Vikings. The Eagles are 14-3, 7-2 at home at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 40 Fahrenheit, partly cloudy, 6 miles per hour. Pinnacle opened this up with the Giants as 7-point dogs at -113. They're now at 7.5 at -115, so it's juiced. You can get that Eagles -7.5 at +102. From a total perspective, it opened up at 47.5. It's now up to 48.5. We take a look at the cash here. You have 62% of the tickets on the Giants. and 79% of the cash. So they are in public road dog territory. 78% of the tickets and 87% of the cash on the over, and we're watching it go up. Spenny Penny Bombs is on the Giants plus 7.5. Giants coming off an impressive 31-24 victory at Minnesota. They're now 14-4 against the spread on the year. Daniel Jones was excellent. 24-35, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Also ran 17 times for 78 yards. So he became the first quarterback in NFL history to go for 300-plus yards passing, 2+ passing touchdowns, and 70-plus yards rushing. Isaiah Hodgins is just, stepping up when the season is most important. 8 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown. Slayton caught 4 for 88. Saquon Barkley ran 9 times for 53 yards and 2 touchdowns. He caught 5 for 46. The Giants pass rush didn't record a sack, but they got 11 hits on Kirk Cousins. Azeez Ojulari got hurt in the second quarter and was ruled out at halftime. It sounds as if it was just a contusion, and he should be good to go. The Giants allowed 5.2 yards per rush attempt. That was the second worst in the NFL. They allowed 144.2 rush yards per game this year, and we know exactly what the Eagles want to do. The Eagles running backs have rushed for 10 or more yards on 13% of their carries this season. That's tied for third best in the NFL. The Giants have allowed 10-plus yards on 15.3% of carries to running backs this season. That's the second worst in the NFL. Having Adoree Jackson back is a big deal. And I almost think that, you have Adoree Jackson back, you have, Xavier McKinney back. And when the Eagles played the Giants twice this year, neither of those two were in the lineup. And then you have a real healthy pass rush now and a dangerous pass rush that's healthy. So their 31st, their defense was ranked 31st in Pro Football Focus's coverage grade during the regular season. But I don't know if I trust those numbers. Fabian Moreau is not good. He allowed a quarterback rating of 101.2. Darnay Holmes allowed 99.5 quarterback rating. Adoree Jackson, 74.3. I mean, he's such a step up in the secondary. The Eagles coming off their bye for being the number 1 seed in the NFC. They have failed to cover 4 straight games. Jalen Hurts been dealing with this shoulder injury. He did not look good in their Week 18 victory against the Giants backups. And in both of the games, as I said, Xavier McKinney and Adoree Jackson weren't out there against Hurts. The Eagles held Daniel Jones to 169 passing yards in their Week 14 matchup. That's 10 yards below their league-leading average of 179.8. But feels like Jones is just playing at a higher level now. That was just recent. That was Week 14. The Eagles' defense is dangerous. They sacked opposing quarterbacks on 11% of pass attempts this year. That's the best mark in the NFL. They allowed the 4th most rushing yards to quarterbacks this season, but Daniel Jones did not run on them in Week 14. He was held to 26 yards. Philly allows 4.6 yards per carry this season. That's the 9th most in the NFL. So they do have some vulnerabilities. Their offensive line is so good. And we'll talk about the injury to Lane Johnson here in a second, but their offensive line second in Pro Football Focus's pass blocking efficiency at 89.7. They allowed the fewest sacks and quarterback hits in the NFL. That's 11 sacks and 9 quarterback hits, 625 dropbacks. So you have All-Pro Jason Kelce, and then Lane Johnson, who has a torn adductor in his groin, and he's pushed the surgery into the offseason. He's listed as questionable, but he will be on the field. He didn't allow a single quarterback hit during the regular season, but they're going to have their hands full with Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams, and Kayvon Thibodeau. Josh Sweat been dealing with a neck injury, but he is good to go. Avonte Maddox, though, may not be good to go. Looks like we'll find out more when they put out. I mean, he's going to be on all the injury reports, but he's got a toe injury, and he may not be available to play. Take it away for us here, Andy. Giants, Eagles, NFC Divisional Playoffs.
Yeah, I don't. Just to address that right off the top, I don't think Maddox plays. That'd be a big help, obviously, but I think he was leaning towards being out. Mm-hmm. And I did look at like rushing yards per game given up to quarterbacks, but that's a super noisy stat based on like who did you play? Because there are some teams it's like, man, you played like one running quarterback the whole year. Like how are we supposed to grade this, from team to team? So tough to get a true glean on that. But the Eagles did have decent results against Daniel Jones. And God, I don't know, Giants fans, Daniel Jones stands are gonna hate me for this, but Daniel Jones isn't as good as what we saw last week. Like that was and you know what? Neither is Isaiah Hodgins. You look at his numbers. He has 180 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Vikings in the games he played him. Yeah, that's like his stat line for the other 8 games that he played. Like it was just a masterclass by Kafka. And you've seen this coming down the stretch. Was the teams, and I said this yesterday to someone. I said it's like, hey, you can tell who got the assignment. Hey, here's how you play the Vikings, because they play a garbage zone. They're not that good. If you know how to beat this zone with, any receivers, honestly, you can just march down the field. This Vikings defense is actually abhorrent. It's not good. And just think about every time you saw Hodgins or any Richie James or any of those guys who are not big names catching the ball, they were wide open. It wasn't Daniel Jones throwing in contested coverage. These guys were just running, sitting down in these gaps in the zone and just getting huge chunks of yards. And it's a bad coverage unit outside of maybe Harrison Smith with what he does at safety. But Patrick Peterson has had some flash plays, but he doesn't grade out all that well a lot of times. He's kind of hit or miss, and he's old. So it was a game where the Giants honestly should have scored more points. Like I was a little disappointed they punted a few times. And so I don't think you see this good of an offense versus the Eagles. This is a much tougher defense. Minnesota's bad. Go look at like I said, the teams that got the assignment were a smart coaching staff like the Giants and Kafka and Dable, and then a couple teams down the stretch who know them very well, who'd played them already this year. Detroit, Green Bay, like the teams that knew what they were doing could just expose this defense. So I do want to give a lot of credit to the Giants. But at the same time, it's a much, much tougher test. It'll be another road game playing a team that is coming off their bye. It's well rested now. I don't understand if Jalen Hurts is fully healthy. He's off the injury report, but who knows? You don't have to disclose an injury if he's practicing in full. Like if he's practicing in full, you can just say he's fine. If there's something hampering him, I guess that's still a thing. I think the Philadelphia Eagles will run quite a bit. I think the Giants offense will look much worse than it did last week. And I'm playing this under. And I hate this too, because, we saw that game where Philly really put it on them in the Meadowlands earlier in the year. But to your point, and you brought this up with the pieces in New York that not only weren't available for parts of the season in that secondary, but pieces in this front, in this pass rush for New York have gotten a lot better as the season's progressed. This pass rush is very good for the Giants all of a sudden. And like you said, Philly with some question marks up front. So I think the Giants pass rush is effective. I think their offense is less than effective compared to what we saw versus Minnesota. Philly runs the ball effectively, but that drains a lot of clock, and you end up with like a 24-20, 24-17 kind of game. So I'm on this under. I think this should be on the other side of 48. It's not the strongest play, but I did make this play at 48.5.
I get it. I get it.
There's nothing fun about taking an under with a team that just looks that good and then a team off a bye, but I think it's a titch high, and it's a divisional matchup. It's the third straight matchup for two good teams. It feels like a cagey affair to me, and my numbers make it slightly too high.
Yeah, and it's not all 48.5. There's still some books hanging 48, but this makes sense to me. We can get you an under 48.5 at minus 105 over at 5 times, and I like it. It just feels like if you were going to study the stats year long from these two football teams, then it would lead you towards an over. But the Giants' defense is stronger and healthier than they've been all year, and it's a huge difference from what we've seen. Their pass rush has become very strong, and of course we talked about Adoree Jackson and McKinney back. So then you have an Eagles offense that isn't as strong as it's been all year. You have an offensive line that has some ailments. They're just not quite as dominant. I know that you're going to have Sweat back defensively, but I agree. I think the reason why it's being moving to the over is because of what everybody just saw with the Giants in Minnesota, and I think it's I like what you had to say about not to believe really what you've seen about the Giants. I think everything points that this is a smart move that you're on, and I'm very interested in it myself. Under 48.5 at -105. And
Yeah, and we'll see what Kafka's game plan looks like this week while he's taking Zoom calls for head coaching jobs.
yeah, absolutely. And also we have the public dog here. And we know what they've done this year, especially the public road dog. They put up terrible, terrible numbers. And right now, everybody is on 61% of the tickets and 78% of the cash right now, with just under 15,000 tickets in. So
and there was and it did get beat up a little to I seen this go down to 7 at Chris, and then it got hit hard. It went 7.5 -15 hard. Like somebody was multi-clicking, and they were taking 25K on sides at that point. So, like somebody hit this hard at Philly -7 when I finally got down there. So that's probably looking like a pretty strong resistance point if it ever gets back down there again. Seems like it might just end up sitting around 7.5 at this point. And again, if you're a teaser, if you like a good teaser, your Kansas City -2, Philly -1.5 teaser, hashtag America's teaser. If that one hits, the books are going to take it in the short on teasers for the weekend because that's just going to be the most common combination of all time.
Well, I like where you're at. I like this under 48.5. It's still 48 at Bet365. It's not something that I need to rush into because who knows? I mean, it just keeps getting bet. It keeps moving to the over. Slatsy has a question. He says, can you ask Andy what his most important key number is when betting an under?
I mean, a lot of it depends on matchups, but you can look up, how certain teams play, how their tempo is in neutral game states. And then some of these too, you do have to look. It's like, how is this team's tempo in, a game state where they're trailing in a game that they're a big underdog? Because, more often than not, they're probably like 60-70% of the time they are going to be trailing for chunks of that game. If you have a team, like I mentioned with, and Kansas City's kind of a piss poor example because they're such a good team. But like I said, if you have a team that just can kick tempo up when they're trailing, Tampa Bay last night was a good example, even though they didn't really get it done. But we've seen that when Tom Brady is maybe the best there's ever been at a 2-minute drill. Like when he has a team clicking and throwing down the field, that you see defensive timeouts all the time, where it's like, all right, uncle, they say, like, this guy is murdering us right now. We're going to give up a touchdown in the next 3 plays. We need a timeout because he's running a well-oiled machine. So when I'm looking at some of that, it's not bad having a team that's maybe a little less experienced in that sense. Newer coaching staffs, and I know I love both these coaching staffs, but younger quarterbacks, newer coaching staffs, it can be a little slippery slope down in some of those situations. So situational stuff, and then like matchup stuff, like we talked about too. Some of it isn't even stats based. It is leaning on we have these numbers. The public's seen this Giants team. We can't stop talking about how good this offense is, and at the same time that this is an incredibly tough opponent compared to the Minnesota defense. And at the same time, the New York Giants defense hasn't been great, but now they have a pass rush that's coming together. Like I said, now they have, some secondary pieces that are playing well. Adoree Jackson is good. They actually did a really good job because kind of low-key not talked about, Dak Purdy and Daniel Jones. But right there, Kirk Cousins was right there with them. Like Kirk Cousins low-key had a really good day. Maybe one of the best games he's played. It was super clean, and they still limited that team to 24. A team that was coming from behind for big chunks of the game. Like this defense played really well against an offense that we've seen pop off, and they were getting it from all kinds of contributors. It wasn't just Justin Jefferson. So I think this New York Giants offense is overrated, and the defense is underrated at this point, which is not where I thought we'd be at this point in the year. Yeah. And good point by Gerald Jones, and we'll point this out in the other NFC game, but yeah, the Giants have played a ton of road games coming down the stretch. It's something to look at when you're betting on teams that you think maybe you're betting on teams to win the conference before the season. You're not going to know a lot, but you will know where games are going to be played. And that was always going to be the problem with Dallas if they weren't able to win the division, is their last 2 games were road games. So the other NFC East team that we're not mentioning here is now playing their 4th consecutive road game, which is just always tough.
Well done. I love that breakdown. I would like to join you on the under.
Yeah, and I guess Harold Williams says too, he leans Giants with the points. Like, I think it'll be a lower scoring game. That would be a lean of mine too. If I had to take a side, it would probably be the Giants, even though I'm saying they're probably getting a little too much love in the market. And I should look. My power number on this is like 8. Like it's right there. So it's close.
Well, let's move on to Sunday, January 22nd. We will have NFL live streams for both these games, live bet streams here. Connor Mack will be hosting the Bengals Bills, and I will be hosting my Niners Cowboys. Let's start with the AFC Divisional Playoffs. Cincinnati Bengals 12-4, 6-3 on the road. Now that's 13-4. Still 6-3 on the road. Bills 14-3 after that win, and are now 8-1 at home. We're at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York. 32 Fahrenheit. Chance of snow showers, 14 miles per hour. Let's take a look at the line history here. This opened up with the Bills at -4. That +4 for the Bengals was juiced at the opening line. Now we're at 5. So it's been a 1-point move towards the Buffalo Bills from 4 to 5. From a totals perspective, it opened up at 50 and has dropped. It's dropped down to 48. Cash-wise here, 12,775 tickets in. 28% of the tickets are on the Bills and 57% of the cash. Which means that the sharper, bigger bets have come in on the Bills, and the lines moved from 4 to 5. And the Bengals are the very scary public dog here. 69% of the tickets, 99% of the cash on the over, and yet it's dropped 2 points. Sammy Comer says Bengals money line. Spenny Pennybombs is on +5 in the money line and says riding the Bengals train to the AFC Championship and Super Bowl. The Bengals, what's happened with this football team in the last 2 weeks is a real cause of concern for me, as I've got futures on the Bengals that I was extremely confident in, week 17.
Yeah.
And I'm not anymore. I'm very, very nervous. Bengals underwhelmed in their 24-17 wildcard victory over Baltimore as their 9th straight win. They're 12-3 against the spread in their past 15 games. They're 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 road games. Those are all nice numbers. The Ravens outgained the Bengals 364 to 234. It was a Sam Hubbard fumble return, 98 yards in the fourth quarter, the longest fumble return for a touchdown in NFL postseason history. Burrow was 23 of 32 for 209 yards in the touchdown. Jamar Chase caught 9 passes for 84 yards in the touchdown. Mixon ran 11 times for 39 yards, caught 3 passes for 17 yards. Bengals running backs have averaged just 73.5 rushing yards per game this season. That's second worst in the NFL. Offensively, they're averaging 5.4 yards per play, which is just 14th in the NFL. If you are solely basing your plan of action here on statistics, well, the Bengals should be dogs at this number. They lose left tackle Jonah Williams to a left knee injury in the first half. They're already playing without right tackle Lyle Collins and right guard Alex Kappa due to injuries. Williams suffered a dislocated kneecap. They're calling him week to week. This is the same injury that he suffered on the opposite leg in week 5. And he played through the whole issue with the brace on the injured leg. It seems like that's not going to happen here. And I don't understand the nuances as to why that is. So with Williams out, the Bengals use Jackson Carman at left tackle. Second round pick in 2021 draft. He's been bad this year and last year. He's just been bad. He had every opportunity to win the starting job. He lost it in the summer to Cordell Volson. With Kappa sideline, you have Max Sharping as the team starting right guard. Then you have Akeem Adeniji starting in place of Lyle Collins, a right tackle. All of a sudden, something that had become such a strength, we're right back to being a serious issue for the Bengals. Defensively, they're allowing opponents to gain an average of 5.4 yards per play. That's 17th in the NFL. The Bengals defense has allowed a third down conversion rate of 41.6% in the second half of the season. That's fifth worst in the NFL. A third down conversion rate in the fourth quarter in the last 4 weeks of the regular season, they were allowing a third down conversion rate in the fourth quarter of 61.5%. That's the worst in the NFL. The defense had 2 sacks and 5 quarterback hits and held the Ravens to 1 of 4 in the red zone. But I'm concerned. None of those stats. I was not put. The only stat you could talk about is, look, they're covering on the road. Look, they covered 12 of their last 15. Other than that, all of the stats I was pulling out today made me more concerned about the Bengals. But the Bills, I mean, look, they come off a much tighter than expected 34-31 win at home over the Dolphins, and their third-string quarterback, Skylar Thompson. They've won 8 straight. Josh Allen was 23 of 39 for 352 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He also ran 4 times for 20 yards and lost a fumble. He is not playing clean football out there. The Bills committed 6 turnovers in the red zone this season. That's the most in the NFL. The offensive line did not protect Allen. He was sacked 7 times. Now, they did outgain the Dolphins 423 to 231. And, that the points that were scored were basically the Dolphins taking advantage of mistakes and some good special teams play. The Bills were 9 of 16 on third down. Stephon Diggs caught 7 for 114. Gabe Davis caught 6 for 113 and a touchdown. Singletary ran 10 times for 48 yards, and Cook ran 12 for 39 and a touchdown. So the Bills are second in the league in yards per play. They lead the NFL in third down conversion rate, 50.72% on third down. That's an unbelievable number. They had a third down conversion rate of 66.7% in the fourth quarter, the last 4 weeks of the regular season. That's the best in the NFL. Now, the defense did look vulnerable at times against the third-string quarterback, but they did rank 6th in total defense this year, allowing 319.1 yards allowed per game. The 7th-ranked defense in terms of third down efficiency, allowing 37.5 conversion rate, 37.5%. Matt Milano, all-pro, he looked awesome, man. 2 sacks. The team finished with 4 sacks, 11 quarterback hits, and Marlowe and Elam had interceptions. Take it away here, Andy. Do I have every right to be very concerned after studying this game for a long time today?
I think you too. It's kind of like the same case. It's the same case you make for Jacksonville, and I'm kind of going against the chat here. I played some Buffalo, not at this number, but I took it at a lower number. And fuck it, we'll make it official. Like, I'll play it at 5. With adjustments, I make this like 6. Just being at home against a team that's now going to be down multiple linemen. Like, I don't know how you come back from it. I've dislocated a kneecap. I thought I got shot. My God, these guys are tough. Like, I just laid there and cried for a while after I popped it back in. Like, it's just an awful injury. I'm not sure how you play professional football. I don't think he plays. I think he'd be missing multiple offensive linemen again, which, you can say he played with a bad offensive line. But for the like, there was at least, there was some continuity there. Like, those guys, the offensive linemen, for the most part, you got a bunch of games out of all of them. So, and you've heard offensive linemen talk about this. I've heard interviews, and they say, like, this wasn't the best group of guys I ever played with, but we played together for the whole season, and that's why we got good. Because it's like getting to know everyone around you and working as a unit together, even if you're not the highest skill position or highest skilled offensive tackle, working with the same guard next to you for 16 games matters. So I think there was some, and not that it worked out great. I mean, he still got sacked more than anybody has ever been sacked in a season, if you count the playoff games. Like, Joe Burrow didn't have a great year, but sacks are sometimes a quarterback stat, and he didn't do himself all the favors he could have done. So I do make this a little bit of value at home for Buffalo, even with the lower total. It's crazy. If you'd have said like 5 weeks ago this total would be 48, I said that's nuts. But I mean, the Bengals offense was truly atrocious. I mean, they had 2 nice drives, and that was kind of it. It was it was pretty much the entire second half was garbage. Like, I talked to Drew about this yesterday after the fumble 6. It was, it was holding your breath time if you had any good numbers on Cincinnati. There are 5 drives after the fumble between the two teams. They combined, it was like 27 plays for 52 yards. The only good drive, I think the only really great drive there was the one that ended in the fumble and the recovery for Tyler Huntley, who played really well. So I'm worried more about Cincinnati against Huntley than I am anything we saw. Like Skylar Thompson didn't have a good day. You know, the scoreboard in both times now that Miami and Buffalo's gotten together this year and the loss has been wild. Like the fact that the result was even close in that game is something wild. Like the Miami drives were what? You had the interception. You had early on. You had a field goal. You had a field goal. The second field goal was an 18-yard drive after an interception. You had the third field goal, which was after kind of a bad punt. You had the interception that led to the touchdown. That was an 18-yard drive. So yeah, the longest drive the Miami had in the first half was 38 yards. Like, and they were down 17-20. It probably should have been 17-17. Like Miami was just, like you said, really taking advantage of the Buffalo Bills miscues. I don't know if they were just not taking this game seriously, looking ahead. But the defense looked a little, like you said, Milano was great, but a lot of the defensive guys looked a little disinterested, which was troubling. I do think they probably got a good yelling at after the damn game. But even in the second half, I mean, the Miami touchdown to take the lead was not that offense. It was a sack fumble touchdown. And then after that, Miami punted, Miami threw a touchdown, Miami punted, and then they had the one decent long drive. But really, outside of the one scoring drive in the second half, Miami's next best drive was a 7-play, 30-yard drive that ended in a fourth down, loss of possession to end the game, essentially. Like the Buffalo Bills were just kind of a product of stubbing their toe in the dark and having bad luck. Like I really think that box score or that final score is a titch misleading until you end up looking at the turnovers and just like where they occurred, obviously. So they doubled them up on yardage. They had 25 first downs. I'm not worried about this Buffalo offense. I'm probably looking at some Buffalo team total over here too. But yeah, it was kind of accommodating errors for both teams. And yeah, and that's the thing too. There were some drops by Miami. Like this team too. Like, I worried about that with Miami a little because they do have dynamic weapons. And we'd seen that, like, just get those guys the ball and good things will happen. And we didn't see that a ton, especially in the second half. So, I'm on Buffalo. I'm fine laying the 5 here. I think they actually win with margin. I haven't been a huge Cincinnati fan with some of the injuries. This total feels a little low, but at the same time, it is low for a reason. That Bengals offense was atrocious in the second half.
Yeah, I get it. I understand your side here.
Yeah, I'm not. This is the one I'm least happy about betting, but
well, the change in this Bengals team in 2 weeks has really taken the fucking air out of my skin. Like I was so confident in this Bengals team. Like when we were setting up for that Week 17 game, the Bengals were just playing at a level where I was like, they're the best team in the league right now. And you take away 2 more offensive linemen, and now I'm very concerned. I'm so concerned with my future action, and I can understand why you're on the Bills -5. Watching that Ravens game was it was pretty tough to watch. The Bengals putting up 234 total yards in that game. Pretty tough to watch, and. Here we are now. I'm very, very uncomfortable. Spenny says, I'm not worried. I'm still confident that the Bengals are a better team than Buffalo. It's amazing how important protection is because Burrow just did not look good all of a sudden. And
it was tricky. It was tricky for me to truly grade like what those offensive linemen mean. Like when you do power numbers, like quarterback to quarterback, there's actually like stats you can use and say like, this guy was 30% worse EPA per play and the time he backed up and the last spot he played. And you can try to put some numbers to it, but it's so hard to like make an adjustment because at full health, I don't think I'd be betting this. I don't think I would have bet it at the 3.5. I don't think I'd have bet it at the 4. Like, a full health Bengals game. And truly, too, it'll be fun to see the Narrative Nation come out for this one. Because you wonder, I've seen this already. People said, like, were they looking ahead to the Cincinnati game to have DeMar at the stadium and, like, get everyone's pumped up for, this rematch against the Bengals in the game that didn't happen. But, yeah, it's like both teams looked ahead to this game. I wonder if I wonder, it'll be funny if this 48 just gets blown out of the water. It's like a 70-point game because both offenses were just kind of looking ahead. And obviously, like, Baltimore is a good defense, but it's a divisional foe, and I mean, you should be able to at least put up, mid-range numbers against that with the offense you have. So that was troublesome because it wasn't all Baltimore playing really good defense. It looked like a bad game plan from Cincinnati at times.
Yeah, that game is still playing over and over in my head. The reason why I got put in such a bad spot by not putting in those 2 parlays that were sent to me by a friend was because I thought that the Ravens were going to cover, and he had the Bengals -6.5 on both of his tickets, and we're sitting at the goal line. I'm like, well, there's going to be no problems at all here. And then it's so funny how often the worst case scenario can happen when you're gambling. Like it's unbelievable. It just happens so often. Not Flush Down says he only plays Chase over receptions. Burrow will throw to him 15 times. Spenny says Baltimore D had really turned the corner second half of the season, especially pressure-wise. Tough divisional game. Yeah, no, I get it.
They were my numbers suss that out. Like for the entire season, I have Baltimore as like the 17th best defense. But if you look at the second half of the season, they're a lot more like top 10. Like it did play a lot better in the second half. So
Andy is on the Bills -5 at -104. Let's move on to the final game here of this divisional round. It's almost sad that we're here because that means we only have 3 games left to cap after this for the rest of the season.
Not doing Pro Bowl?
No, we're not. Okay. It's a full horse.
Okay.
That's all thoroughbreds that week. NFC Divisional Playoffs, Cowboys 12-5, 4-4 on the road at San Francisco 49ers, 13-4, 8-1 at home. Or Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, California, 57 Fahrenheit, partly cloudy, 10 miles per hour is the win. Let's take a look at the line history here for this one. This one opened up with Dallas +4. That didn't last long. They've been at 3.5 since then. It was at 4 for about 3 hours. Totals wise, opened up at 46, juice to the over. There's been a 6-cent move to the over, so it's probably at 46.5 with other books, but Pinnacle hanging the 46 at -116. Go over to the cash flow in this one. We have 10,037 tickets in. 32% of the tickets are on Dallas and 58% of the cash. So the bigger bets are on Dallas at this point. 35% of the tickets and 85% of the cash is on the under, but market slightly moving towards the over. Spenny Penny Bombs is on the Niners -3.5. Harold Williams says Niners. The Cowboys lost to the 49ers in the wildcard round last year, 23-17. And now they're on the short end of the stick when it comes to rest. We already heard Andy talk about how this is the 4th straight road game for the Cowboys. But they come into this on short rest. They beat the Bucs 31-14 on Monday night, their first playoff road win in 30 years. NFL teams that have 5 days of rest are 9-24 against opponents that have a full week off. Dak Prescott was excellent, 25-33 for 305 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. He also ran 7 times for 24 yards and a touchdown. He played turnover-free football for the first time in 8 games. The Cowboys are undefeated this year when they don't throw an interception, 6-0. Dalton Schultz had 7 catches for 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. CeeDee Lamb had 4 for 68 and a touchdown. Tony Pollard ran 15 times for 77 yards. Zeke did not look good, ran 13 times for just 27 yards. The Cowboys averaged 3 yards per carry in the last 4 weeks of the regular season. That was tied for 3rd worst in the NFL. We talked about how their ground attack changed when Terrence Steele got hurt versus the Texans. their guard. The defense was very strong. They held the Bucs to 1 of 3 in the red zone. They got 2 sacks, hit Brady 6 times. J-Ron Kearse had a pick. The Cowboys have struggled to stop the run this season. They're 17th in the league in opponent yards per carry, and we know what the 49ers' plans are going to be. The Cowboys' defense rated 2nd in defensive DVOA. The 49ers' defense rated 1st in total defensive DVOA. So I can understand a look on the under in this one. The 49ers' defense and the Cowboys' defense are very strong. Jason Peters suffered a hip injury, and the short rest is not going to help. He's a 40-year-old guy. He's been solid this year, and his absence could lead to more pressure on Prescott. The 49ers are 6-0 against the spread in their last 6 home games. They're 8-0 against the spread in their last 8 games against NFC opponents. And now they have 2 extra days of rest than the Cowboys. They come in off a dominant 41-23 victory at home over the Seahawks. They've won 11 straight. Over that 11-game winning streak, they're beating opponents by an average score of 31-15. They've scored more than 30 points in 8 of those games. They've given up 20 points or less in 9 of them. They put up 505 yards of offense against the Seahawks. Purdy was excellent, 18 of 30 for 332 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also ran 4 times for 16 yards and a touchdown. 332 yards passing were the second most ever by a rookie in the playoffs. He became the first rookie quarterback ever to account for 4 touchdowns in a playoff game. He tied an NFL record for rookies set by Justin Herbert with his 7th straight game with multiple TD passes. The guy's rolling, and he's started 6 games this year. They're 6-0, and he's thrown 13 touchdowns and 4 picks. In games where Purdy's taking the majority of the snaps, the 49ers are 7-0, averaging 34.6 points per game. He had a 107.3 passing rating during the regular season. It was 131.5 in that postseason debut. The Seahawks only sacked Purdy once. They hit him 3 times. San Francisco's offensive line is capable of, I don't want to say neutralizing Micah Parsons in the Dallas pass rush, but we know the strength of the Cowboys' defense is their pass rush, and the Niners' offensive line can slow that down. Deebo Samuel caught 6 for 133 yards and a touchdown, ran 3 times for 32 yards. What a playmaker he is. Brandon Ayuk caught 3 for 73. Christian McCaffrey ran 15 times for 119 yards, caught 2 passes for 17 yards and a touchdown. He's played 12 games for the Niners, and he has 12 touchdowns. The 49ers averaged 394 yards from scrimmage in the last 4 weeks of the regular season. That was 3rd best in the NFL. They threw for 8.9 yards per attempt over those 4 weeks. That's the best in the NFL. 6 touchdowns were 20-plus yards in the last 4 weeks of the regular season. That's the most in the NFL. Now, the teams that the Niners were playing were not very strong, and the Cowboys are the best team that Purdy will have played. The Niners' defense was tough, 3 sacks. The 49ers allowed 3.5 yards per carry over the last 4 weeks of the regular season, tied for 2nd best in the NFL. They allowed just 15.2 points per game this year. They allowed scores on 26% of opponents' drives this season. That's the best in the NFL. If you're trying to find the weakness in the 49ers, you could say it's their secondary, 11th in the NFL in opponents' yards per pass, and then 8.2 yards per throw they've allowed over their last 3 games. But they've been dominant at Levi Stadium. The Chiefs came in there and smashed them, but no one else did. In their home wins, the average margin of victory is 17.5 points. All of the 49ers' home wins have come by more than 5 points, and all but one have come by 13 points or more. Take it away, Andy. This is my hosting the Sunday Night Live bet stream for Cowboys Niners, a game near and dear to my heart, and you guys know I have futures on the Niners from the beginning of the year. Take it away, Andy. Floor is yours. Cowboys, Niners.
Yeah, we'll see what this team total is. I might take the team total over in the Niners game as well, but as you said, Purdy hasn't been stopped, but he hasn't played anyone. But in the games, I mean, even not playing anyone, they're just still NFL teams. Ask, you haven't played anyone? Ask people who played, Tyler Huntley and Skylar Thompson last year or week. I mean, shit happens in NFL games. Like, it doesn't matter who's on the other side of the ball. Bad things can happen to you if you take anyone unseriously in this league. You can lose to the worst team in the league. I mean, the Texans were outright trying to probably should have been trying to lose a game at the end of the year, and they ended up winning. So shit happens if you don't put your best game plan together. I like the Niners, obviously, here. I'm probably just going to play it, make it official. I know it hasn't been the greatest schedule, but they're another team that we talked about. Like, it's a team that just gets healthier and healthier every week. Brock Purdy is gaining more confidence, even if he doesn't turn out to be a long-term good quarterback. The fact that he has a genius offensive coach kind of putting this game plan together, and maybe Shanahan wouldn't look like such a genius if they didn't have, Elijah and Debo and CMC and Ayuk and Kittle and Juszczyk and everybody in this offensive line and this left tackle that's an absolute anchor. Like, they have the players. Like, that's what makes Shanahan so much better. It's like, it's easier to build a boat if you have boat building tools, I guess. He has everything he needs to put together just electric game plans. Like, and we talk about it. Who was struggling to keep this Seattle team down in the first half? Obviously broke away in the second half. I'm thinking that plus 10 was probably a good number. Like, I think they stay inside that number more time, about as many times as they cover like this. In the long run, that was probably a well set number. And kudos if you did have some San Francisco, if you had some over, but it does feel like this does get bet up. Everybody I know is betting this. I'm not sure if it moved from 4 to 3.5 on bets. I think some books got a little jumpy, and some books just open earlier, and they opened a 4.5 at some places, and then Circa pops up with their big ass limits. And Pinnacle opens up with their big limits and big-ish limits. That's still for openers. And there's 3.5s on the board at some sharp books. And I mean, some books will move on air. They say like, we don't want to be, everybody gobbling up our 4s if we can just move to the 3.5 anyway. Like, sometimes sharper books open at a different number and these lines end up moving, even if the betting is going the other direction. They could be taking a bunch of San Francisco money at -4, and you see Circa open at 3.5, and you might end up moving to 3.5 anyway. Said like, just we don't need to get hit hard on the other side of this. So I'm fine taking the 3.5 here. I still don't know if Purdy's actually good, but he's got a horseshoe up his ass, and he's got all the playmakers in the world around him, and they're putting together a game plan that just absolutely crushes. And at the same time, you've got Dallas playing their 4th straight road game, like you mentioned. You got Dallas playing, what is it? Almost 2 full days less rest. And I know that's built in. I know that's not like, I'm the first person to mention this, but that makes a big difference. And I think it makes a much bigger difference at this point in the year than it does in, say, week 3. Like, these are 19 games or 19 weeks of banging around. It's been since August training camp. I mean, these guys have been knocked around. 2 days that you don't get to spend in rehab and in the tub and, stretching and working on your injury sucks. Like, they did Dallas or Tampa, whoever's going to come out of that, a huge disservice. And yeah, I would say I was super disappointed in that Tampa defense. And anybody who thought like Dak had some outlier game hasn't been paying attention. Dak's good. Like, Dak's a top 10 quarterback. Clearly, he's had plenty of good games. It's just sometimes I do think the coaching in Dallas is a little suspect, even though those guys are probably getting interviews. Dan Quinn's already getting interviews, speaking of. So, was impressed with Dallas in general, but big step up in competition. Another road game heading out west here. So I'll take Niners, and I think I'll have a decent number at 3.5.
I like it. I like it. I agree with you. I think that
they might have a problem with their kicker too, Jimmy. If anyone caught on to that, I could not believe what was happening. Like, one's funny. One happens all the time. 2 is like troublesome because they both went the same way. Mm-hmm. And then 3 was like, he overcorrected way too far because it went the other way. Yeah. And then 4, he was getting awful close. And if the goalposts were higher, maybe that caroms in. He had to be cursing the goalpost because that might have bounced in. You never know on a doink because it went right over the top of it. But fuck that poor guy.
And
they're keeping him. They're not bringing in a kicker.
No, you got it.
I think that's the right call.
There was a time this year where he was lights out. He was hitting everything.
Mm.
There was a time where I was like, man, I thought he was a top 5 kicker in the league at one point this year, and so, but obviously he's going to be in his head now. I like your look on the Niners -3.5, and I don't feel like I'm compounding losses by betting it, even though I do have the futures on the Niners. I badly want the Niners to go into Philadelphia. I think that would just be must watch dream action for me. Total wise, Andy, can you touch on the total here? It opened up at some books offshore at 47. It opened up at penny at 46. There's been a 6-cent move towards the over. There's 46 and a halves at most books right now. I like the under in this one. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I'd lean that way. I think both offenses probably outperformed a little. I wish it was 48. Like, I think this number's bang on at this spot. 46, 47 is where I'd have this. If this got bet up and it went, if a bunch of money came in and we saw 48, 48 and a half, I'd be tempted by an under here. So, yeah, Dallas is, if Dallas gives, I should check how many runs do you think Ezekiel Elliott got? How many touches do you think he got in the game? Let's count any passes to even targets.
Well, he ran 13 times for 27 yards.
Yeah, 13. And then he got 2 targets. That's 15 plays he used on Zeke. If they do the same thing, and I know the game state was completely different. Like, a lot of those touches were, hey, we're running down the clock. But if they give him 8 to 10 carries in this one, it feels like the game's lost. Like, he's out of juice right now. And Pollard is patient. He's finding holes. He's knifing. He's cutting at the right spots. Like, he's just so much better. And Nutflush keeps bringing up betting a 2-point conversion for Dallas. That'll be funny if he misses one extra point, you got to think they think about it on the next one.
Yeah, it's an interesting.
If Zeke gets 10 touches, I worry about Dallas even being close in this one. It's just like kneeling.
Nutflush will be at the football game as well, with a dream spot to be in. Tickets are so expensive for this one, man. Very, very soon as the Cowboys went through, the ticket prices just skyrocketed. There's Nunya in the house. Great to see you. Sammy Comer's already on this first half under. I think this game goes under, and I'm going to not bet it tonight. But I do think of the spots, the 49ers -3.5 and the under in Giants Eagles, I probably will bet tonight. Let's review all action here on our divisional round Gridiron Gamblers. At this point, we have Andy on the under 48.5 in Giants Eagles. I want in on that. He's on the Bills -5 at -104. And he's on the 49ers -3.5 at -105. And I want in on that as well. There you have it. 4 games broken down, and it's sad. It's sad to think there's just 3 games left for us to break down. It's been a hell of a season, and I need a bounce back spot. That was the worst wild card week I can remember ever having, and everything was going against me, and that happens sometimes. But I need to bounce back in a big way. Shout out to all the cappers joining us here for the show. It means a ton to us. Susie Easton, Harold Williams, Nunya, Sammy Comer, Nutflush, Allen, Gerald Jones, Slatsy, Danny Lopez, Real Deal, Prime. What a great, great group. Thank you guys for your insights and everything that you brought to the show throughout the year. Spenny Penny Bombs, Drink in Hand, just a great, great group. So thank you guys. Swiss Horton, Sammy Comer, great group. My man, I'm going to miss this show so much when it's gone. I enjoy it immensely. Andy, you've done such a great job. Any last words for the cappers here supporting the show?
Yeah, just right there. That's my Twitter. if you want to argue football, if you disagree, and obviously you guys disagree with me on the Bengals, drop some stats. I love a good football conversation at Andy MSFW on Elon's Twitter right now. So we'll see you guys over there. And
I love
have
it.
fun. Cherish them. Cherish them. There's so few games left, guys.
I don't know. It's sad. It's very, very sad. Follow Andy with Bet Spurts. And of course, he's the star of the Deep Dive podcast. Let's go out there and get that cash. Divisional round. I need to get that cash. Still have the Niners futures live and the Bengals futures live for now. I don't know how long they will be live for. My thoughts on the game were really delivered by Andy moving on the Bills at 5. So I'm very nervous. Let's go out there and get that cash. Divisional round. Let's get that money. And don't forget to join us for our live bet streams on Sunday. Thank you guys so much for watching. Now let's go out there and win the week. Get that money.